Forgot to add myself to the video there. Hey, yo. What's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer in Wellness with Jer. The world's on fire, and you're here hanging out with me on the internet, which is cool. I appreciate it. I'm glad you care about your mental health. Let's go there now. I read whatever we're calling tweets these days. Terrible things are happening outside. At any time of night and day, poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. The families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find their parents have disappeared. Women return from shopping to find their houses sealed, their families gone. Just kidding. That wasn't a tweet. That's from the Diary of Anne Frank. Shit's bad, y'all. And if you're somebody who is struggling with discomfort around standing up for something, taking a side, calling out fascism when you see it, well, I don't know. This video's for you. Not taking a side is ruining your mental health. Trying to stay neutral in a time of daily horrors happening is not a sustainable stance. I see one of my specialties is religious trauma, and I see a lot of folks who grew up in authoritarian religious groups, fundamentalist, high control religious groups. I'm so sorry. I'm joking. I see a lot of people who grew up under authoritarian religious upbringings, and the idea of taking a stance of speaking out, of being somewhat controversial or seeking out or creating conflict is really, really painful for a lot of people. And I certainly understand that. I grew up in a very conflict avoidant family. I happen to be the black sheep of that family who was pretty comfortable with conflict, but I understand that for a lot of people it's really uncomfortable. And at a time where being on our phones, turning on the news, reading a headline, going outside and seeing masked men, your nervous system is already on fire. And then to do something that you've maybe been trained or indoctrinated or programmed to not do feels really overwhelming as well. And again, I have a ton of space for that. I understand for those people. If you're all just like fucking privileged and living out in the suburbs and are like, oh, this isn't going to affect me, then like this video is for you too, but in a very different way that I don't hold space for. Fuck you. Might have to edit that part out. Won't do well with SEO. The struggle, the reason this is not sustainable, the reason staying neutral or not taking a side isn't sustainable is because it is keeping your nervous system in a constant state of arousal. What our brain is sort of the jumping off point for our nervous system to assess threat. And so that stress response cycle sort of goes like, oh no, there's a saber-toothed tiger. I better run away. We go back and run away to our village. We've moved away from the threat, but we know the threat still exists. And so we gather up our companions and we make a little hunting party and we go hunt the saber-toothed tiger. And then we bring it back to our village and we eat it in the midst of a big feast and celebrate. And then we rest, right? So we have threat, eliminate the threat, engage in community, celebrate, rest, right? Like that's sort of our stress response cycle. That's what our brain wants to do. And again, I use that saber-toothed tiger example all the time because one, I think people understand it, even though none of us have ever had a threat of a saber-toothed tiger. But two, that's how our system evolved. That's what our system is designed to do. And while most of us don't have daily safety threats on the regular, that used to be the case for most of us, that is the reality we're living in now. And what happens with not taking a stance, that happens without picking a side in trying to stay neutral. We're creating a ton of cognitive dissonance. We're staying where the threat exists. We've maybe moved away from it. We ran away from it. We're hiding. We're avoiding it, but we haven't eliminated it. We know it's still out there. And so we have to stay on high alert. And that cognitive dissonance creates stress long term. Again, you cannot turn on the news, you can't watch an execution that's been carried out by the state to and be okay with that and expect that your nervous system isn't going to have a stress response cycle. And that stress response cycle amps up and then is designed to come back down. We're not designed to stay up, right? That's bad for us. That carries its own cost energetically, not in like a woo woo way, and like your muscles get tense. You have to expend energy being prepared for that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And so, for a lot of my religious trauma folks, like this is a fawn response. We had, a parent who would smack us if we talked back. We got spanked regularly. Maybe you grew up with a parent who struggled with substance use and they were just very unpredictable. And you learned that by not speaking up, not standing up for yourself, not putting your neck out there, that you were safer. And that cannot happen. That doesn't work with systemic violence, with state-sponsored violence, with an authority structure, a system above us that has all the power coming down on us as an individual. It just simply will not work. So the reality of staying neutral is that it's bad for you and that it's unsustainable. It will eventually cost too much. And so I think, again, for a lot of people, this can feel very uncomfortable, and I get that. But I talk a lot about congruence in the work that I do. And so my definition of congruence as a therapist is when our thoughts, feelings, and actions are all aligned under our value system. So thoughts and feelings are not things that we control. Those are things that we experience. They happen to us. We like to pretend like we're in charge of those things, but we're, for the most part, not. Very rarely might we be able to dictate some of those things, but our brain is a stimuli assessor organ. It is responding to the things that our system takes in the same way that whatever we're drinking for a beverage, our kidneys is going to process. Our kidneys don't get to pick what they process and don't. They just process whatever liquids we put in them. So I'm drinking an energy drink. That's not great for my kidneys. I'm probably aware of that on some level. Really good for my ADHD though. And so my kidneys aren't saying, nah, we're not going to do that. That's not water. They're just going to process it. Our brain doesn't get to process what it is. Our brain doesn't pick and choose what it's processing. Whatever we're experiencing, whatever we see, we hear, whatever is in our environment, that's what our brain is processing. And so we're not really in charge of our thoughts and our feelings. We are responding to them. We are experiencing them as our brain deals with all of the stimuli in our current environment. And so we like to think we're very clever and we're in charge of those things, but we're not. The classic example is like, don't think of pink elephants. You weren't thinking of pink elephants, and now you are. I told you not to, but you're not actually in charge of your thoughts. You can't not think about it now that it's come up. Which is why the Emperor Joker storyline in Superman is one of my favorite comics. It plays with that. Don't think of pink elephants, really. It's terrible, kills Batman over and over again sort of way. Spoilers from a late 90s comic book run. The feelings portion of that, again, is like a lot of different components in our brain and our body are just sort of going, and we experience them. Feelings are temporary and they are likely to shift and change. And so those are things that we don't get to control. Our actions, again, thoughts, feelings, actions, all aligned under our value system. Our actions are where we do have control. Our actions are where we can look at our thoughts, we can feel our feelings, and we can ideally have some chance, some choice in how we're going to respond, how we're taking in all that stimuli, making it into information that we can use in our decision-making process to take action. And so action is where we have some control. Notice I don't say all control. Again, it's been pretty emphatically shown that we don't have self-determination. We don't have a ton of control in our lives. And just as like a species, but certainly as individuals. And so, again, it's a thing that makes us uncomfortable to sort of confront, but that's where we have the most control. and our ethics system, right? Our value system. That's sort of the thing that ties it all together when we're talking about congruence. I wouldn't say we have control over that, except at a certain level of brain development and life experience. You certainly have had plenty of opportunity to create, build, cultivate an ethics system, a value system that informs sort of what you think of as morality. Now, I don't think most people do a good job cultivating that. I work with a lot of folks with religious trauma, as I mentioned, and a lot of those people are interrogating and weeding and cutting out and trying to plant new things in their ethics system. Again, they were indoctrinated, they were raised in a religious ethics, they were taught morality that isn't necessarily relevant or helpful to them. And so what they got was dogma instead of any sort of functional ethics. And so a lot of those people have to shift and change things. There are concepts of religion that I was raised with that still are very much part of my value system, helping the needy, rooting for the underdog. Like those are things that are, I don't know that I got rooting for the underdog from religion, but like helping the needy was something that I was taught in a religious context that still very much is a big part of my life. Like your friend asks for help, you help them. My work is about helping people. It's where I draw a lot of meaning in my life. So again, that's not all bad, but usually it needs to be tweaked, adjusted. I talk a lot about sort of mental health as gardening, the garden that is our brain. And so cultivating, planting, weeding, pulling out some bad stuff and planting something better, creating an environment where it can grow before we get any sort of functional, useful fruit from that process, right? But so we do have a chance. We do have multiple opportunities, many opportunities as we grow and develop. Once our brain is fully developed to build that ethics system. But again, I think in our modern society, we don't have much push for that. Whether it is religion, whether it is capitalism, whether it is American exceptionalism, whether it is consumerism, social media norms, cultural norms. There's a lot of pressure in what our ethics could be that are not necessarily intentional, well thought out ethical systems. And so while I will say we do have control over that, many people have not either been made aware of or taken advantage of the opportunities that have existed for them to work on their own ethics. And so we have congruence is thoughts, feelings, and actions all aligned in our ethics system. And most of us don't have a very intentional ethics system. We just might not be particularly aware of it. It might not be very well articulated. Thoughts and feelings are not things we control. So we really need to focus on action. We really need to work on our ethics if it's not a thing that we've worked on. And I would argue our ethics are always things. We're growing, we're learning, we're shaping that. That should not be a one and done process. That hopefully is something that grows and changes and has seasons throughout. But for most ethics across the world, across the globe, throughout history, if you're taking kids away from their parents, that's not generally going to be good. If you're murdering people in cold blood, that's generally not going to be good. So, I think there's a pretty cut and dry ethics at play here. And if you're somebody who's preaching neutrality or you're both sides in it, you're what about seeing it, your ethics need work. There is no justification for what's going on right now. Whether you want to say, follow the law and you won't be harmed. Well, that's simply not true. We have mountains and mountains of evidence, especially in America, in our country, that is founded on injustice. That injustice is based on race and gender and religious belief. And whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, you're going to think that fits your side. And that's never, ever how it's broken down. There's class injustice, there's wealth inequality, there's harm done for any number of reasons that is not justice based, with no accountability, with no recourse. And so certainly saying like just follow the law, you won't have any problems, well, that is false, right? And so if that's sort of your argument, um, if you're a fuck around and find out kind of person, like again, that simply is a great fun little acronym to have on a t-shirt when you think you're a badass, but that isn't based in either historical fact or reality. That the idea that a class of people can participate in lots of crime and see no repercussions of it would imply that they do indeed get to fuck around without having to find out. Whereas the more marginalized, the less wealthy aspect of society are always the ones finding out. And so, again, I struggle to even think of hypothetical justifications of this. The group of people who were adamant that wearing masks for a public health epidemic was an unjust expectation of them are now saying that you should have to carry your papers and be open to showing them is again a preposterous swing that if you don't feel any cognitive dissonance about that, like your brain's just not working. Now I'm very open on the mental health side of things to suggest that a lot of people's brains might not be working. The idea that we have at least one, if not more than one generation that has long-term brain damage from chemicals they were exposed to regularly, talking about lead for the boomer generation, could certainly mean we have a generation of people with brain damage. I'm not opposed to that. I think we as a country have done a very poor job of advocating protecting our heads. And so I think we have a lot of people who have physical injuries to their brains specifically. And so plenty of people whose brains could not be working correctly. I think we also have a culture that is anti-education, that is anti-intellectual, and a proliferation of propaganda. And those two things have really meshed well to make an uninformed populace, uneducated and willfully misinformed, which again, I would argue is like a not working brain. That's not how your brain is designed to work. That's certainly not accurate or reliable use of your brain. And so, if you're bootlicking right now, like your brain's not working correctly. I just cannot envision a time where that is better. Even what I used to, maybe back in like 2016 or whatever, simpler times, defend as like, hey, I don't respect it and I don't agree with it, but I can understand, I can wrap my head around logically, if you're wealthy, that you're a conservative because you don't want to pay more taxes. But fascism has never been a sustainable model for making wealth. So that won't work well either in the long run. I think, again, late stage capitalism eventually falls apart and eats itself because it is so focused on quick turnarounds for wealth. So lots of people are trying to make money while you can make money off of the fascist regime and then get out without getting burned. But again, somebody's going to be left holding the bag. And while average citizens are being murdered on the streets by the state right now, at some point there was going to be a reckoning financially for the corporations that have backed and supported the regime. So, I get sort of the wealth accumulation and the idea that fascism can be tied to capitalist ideas. I think, again, with any sort of functional analysis on history would tell you that is a ticking time bomb for financial returns running out and then having repercussions from cultural backlash. So, Target being boycotted, that was going on first for their anti-LGBTQ push, but now for staging ICE operations. Again, we're seeing actual in-store boycotts, not just boycotts, but protests. And I think it'll continue. I would love to see Midwesterners be much more organized in boycotting something like Menards, who has given a ton of money to MAGA, who is in the state of Wisconsin, the largest polluter in the state. And that's probably only true until the AI data centers keep being built. But for now, Menards being the largest polluter in the state, and then also giving a shit ton of money to a regime that is harming people and is working towards deregulation so they can go back to their old polluting ways. with no thought for the environment or future generations' clean drinking water. Fuck off, Menard's family. Where was I going with that? So, yeah, I mean, if you don't have cognitive dissonance, I don't know. That's not great, right? I spoke recently on the podcast about Paul Weyrich, who's one of the founders of the Heritage Foundation and the one of the guys who he coined the term the moral majority that helps get Ronald Reagan elected. He was a huge fan of a functional rail system in the United States. He thought that public transportation should be rail based, whether that's a train system or a subway system or a light rail system, a monorail system. He's a big fan of that, right? And so you can agree with certain policies. RFK has banned red 40 use as an ingredient in America because it's so clearly linked to be a carcinogen, a cancer-causing chemical. I agree with that too, and say, hey, not a fan of authoritarianism, though. And whatever, like you are, if you voted for him 3 times, some part of your cognitive critical thinking skills have failed you. And the idea that it is never too late to learn and grow and be better is certainly part of what makes the human race continue to tick. And so come along, go join a protest, go make a sign, go post something to hopefully educate your Facebook followers who only read things if they're written in all caps. Like it's not too late to get, it's too late for the regime. Again, there needs to be actual accountability. It's America, so there probably won't be. Shoot, this is supposed to be a helpful and hopeful video. But yeah, I mean, now's the time, right? No time like the present to be like, hey, lots of warning signs about this has gone too far, but really gone too far now. So here I am, ready to learn. And that would be cool. And there are great people out there who are ready to welcome you with open arms. I tend to not be one of those people. I'm pretty particular on like, that's stupid and wrong, and you shouldn't do that. You should know better because it's stupid and wrong. This video is going to be hard to post. Content creation in a time of, again, just waking up and watching a U.S. citizen be murdered by the state is tough. As even somebody who's been like, America's always been fascist. That part's not new. Just recording it is new. The cognitive, so yeah, I mean, your thoughts aren't working if you don't feel some sort of cognitive dissonance. If you do feel cognitive dissonance and you're just burying your head in the sand or trying to power through it, or both sides in it, again, the whataboutism is propaganda. That's not functional critical thinking. You're not clever for being like, aha, Obama used ice too. Like, yes, that was a mistake, and also he wasn't doing it this way. Whataboutism is false equivalency. That is a cognitive bias. It's a flaw in critical thinking. It isn't critical thinking. It's a mistake. So don't do that. The fact that you see your favorite talking head do that constantly is, again, propaganda. That's not anything more than that. You're just falling for propaganda. So again, chance to grow and be better. So, that's ethics. I can't wrap my head around how you can't see this as being unethical. I can wrap my head around some of the cognitive biases. We all have them. We all need to actively work against falling victim to our own brain's shortcuts. So I can understand that. But again, this is be better. Feelings, again, I don't know how you view a picture of a 5-year-old in a winter hat, Spider-Man backpack on, and think, I bet that kid's the bad guy. I don't know how you hear about an infant's heart stopping because ice threw a chemical accelerant into a car to smoke people out of it, and the baby's heart stopped and needed to get CPR. I don't know how you watch ice shoot someone and hear that she could have gotten medical aid for up to 8 minutes and was not allowed to receive it and not feel something. Um, so, again, if you're not, I think you're being dishonest with yourself. And if you really truly are sitting with some of this and can't feel anything, like go talk to someone. Something's going on with you, that the way that you are wired to care about your species as a survival tactic that's hardwired into your brain. We got to figure out what's going on there. And that leaves us with actions, right? That's thoughts, feelings, ethics system, and our actions. And the action that might feel safe is to do nothing, or to hide, or to fawn. And we know that that's not what works. I started this with the Diary of Anne Frank because it's a historical precedent for unchecked fascism that harms people. It harms the outsider and the insider. And so there's no way to avoid that. Staying safe isn't cowering in fear. Now, if you're part of a marginalized, vulnerable community, then safety is part of that stress response cycle, right? If you're actively facing the threat right now in the moment and you're not safe, then we have to prioritize running away from the threat, right? But running back to your village. And so that's where connecting to community, doing organizing, letting people who are not facing the direct threat, people who look like this, to keep you safe, right? That you run back to your village and you get your village and then you go, hunt the saber-toothed tiger and you throw a feast and eat it. That's the stress response cycle. And so sometimes that community is keeping you safe. And that's different than when you are abusing your privilege to not engage with something, or you are saying you get to stay neutral when sides are clearly have been drawn for a long time. Again, the question is, are you on the side of pointing a gun at a 5-year-old because of their skin color, or are you against that? And that's, I don't know, that it is truly that simple. Is there nuance on how to run a country? Is there nuance on fiscal responsibility? Is there nuance on how much we should be taxing the rich people to feed children and house the homeless? Sure, there's nuance in those things, but not in sides, not in, are you in support of pointing a gun at a child based on their skin color, or are you against that? I don't know. That's it. Um, Action to take, if you're new to the game, if you're a recent revelation on hey, we're the bad guys, and you don't want to be a bad guy, then, again, learn, educate, connect to people who are already doing the work. If you're not actively part of organizing, if you haven't been an activist in this realm, you're not starting that. It already exists. Minneapolis has been an outstanding example on what organization, grassroots movements, and community-based mutual aid look like, because they had to do so much protesting in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. And so they're well equipped, uniquely, I would argue, in America, one of the best set up for this cities. And every other city and every other town, community, group of people can learn from the way that they have done things. And so again, showing up in a way where you're not reinventing the wheel, you're not starting from scratch, but you are connecting to people who have already been doing the work. You're there to offer support, not reinvent the wheel, not take over the movement. And so I think, resistance might be, again, protecting that community member in your family, making them meals, supporting them, carpooling with them to and fro so that they're not alone or not getting picked up or not being profiled. It might be, again, mutual aid in financial resources and food resources and just general safety. and organizing that. It might be protesting. It might be being a legal observer of the fascist state's illegal behaviors. But finding a way to engage, participating in the public outcry, attempting to hold our elected officials accountable. All of that stuff matters. And again, that's the action piece, that there is action to be taken at every level of organizing, at every level of resistance. And that is good for your mental health. Again, seeing a threat and taking action is what alleviates that. When we feel anxiety, we have a plan, we execute the plan that reduces our anxiety. So neutrality is not a winning model for your mental health. Neutrality is not a winning model for our profession. Therapists, if you are not talking about, assessing, posting on your social media about these things, like, you're failing. I don't give a shit that you're a good EMDR therapist if you can't talk about the trauma that is happening to an entire country right now, right? And I maintain, yes, as therapists, we're in unique roles to talk about these things, and calling out genocides in other country is a thing a lot of my therapy friends did, and some of them didn't, and that was disappointing. But this is not that. This is affecting the people you're in the room with. This isn't across the ocean. This isn't in a different continent. This is a state away. I'm in Wisconsin. And so, it doesn't need to be everything you're doing. It doesn't need to be all you're posting about, but like, I think you're being disingenuous if you think you cannot bring politics in the room. Politics is already in the room. We as therapists are in a unique position to speak out about the harm being done, not just to people as we watch it, but to the mental health of our clients and our communities. That fear as a policy is not sustainable, that's bad, and that these things are truly harmful for people. We have a unique expertise to share how to talk about kids, how to promote safety, how to do consent, and how to gather information. We have a lot of information to share that is useful to people, not just in letting people know that they're safe to come work with us because we are opposed to fascism and authoritarianism, that we will not be using AI because AI is going to give people's data away, that we're not okay with the police state and something like Palantir and facial recognition being used, and that we care about our clients, and that means we protect their confidentiality. That means that we are speaking out against the harm being done. That means we are promoting safe spaces and safe places for people to process these things. Not engaging with this stuff is bullshit. Therapists, we as a profession need to be a lot better about this. We are privileged. We are privileged in our education. We are privileged in our licensure. We are privileged in the role we play in society. And to use that privilege to play it safe and go middle of the road is an abuse of that privilege. I don't know, y'all. It's tough. I wish I could be doing haha funny pro wrestling reviews and talk about other stuff, but that's not what's going on right now. So take care of yourself, take care of somebody else. Like, subscribe, do those things. Send this to your therapist who just keeps promoting their business and not ever talking about any of the things that are harming the mental health of their communities. But seriously, take care of yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And take care of somebody else. Connect your community. That's how we get through this all. Okay. It's rough out there, but connect to your community. Find your people. We'll get through it. All right. Take care, everybody.